is on.
All right. Good morning. It is 10:30. I think that's the time this round's supposed to start. If all the other judges are ready to get started. All right, awesome. So I don't know if you're here, Richard Hugh. And if they're not here, we'll just kind of go to the next person, and when they arrive, we'll call them back. Okay, Tasha. No. Janelle.
Here.
Awesome. Janelle, are you ready to start us off?
Yes. And are you able to hear me and see me?
Yes, we can hear and see you. All right, sounds great. Thank you.
If you click on the website for the app Civil, you'll find words that we can all resonate with. Since COVID-19, many Americans have fallen behind in all aspects. Now, this might sound like the understatement of the century, but it's also the tagline for numerous GoFundMes, petitions for rent relief, and other initiatives to help Americans financially during one of the most challenging times in recent history. But Civil is not a crowdfunding effort or a petition. It's an app where landlords can hire eviction agents as gig workers. According to Vice, on September 21st, 2020, Civil, spelled Civil, is essentially Uber, but for evictions, with individuals being hired onto eviction teams as independent contractors, which landlords can then hire to evict their tenants. Now, Civil is just one of the more recent and more controversial freelance work apps that have exploded over the last decade. From mowing your lawn to writing your grandma a letter, it seems as though almost any task can be gigified. But according to The Guardian on June 5th, 2019, while the concept...
Should we just take a moment before we get this up on YouTube? Since we have family trying to tune in to watch, I'm in support of that.
You know how very supportive families are. We love them, but they're also a pain.
That was a painfully pink drink that you just took a gulp of. It was very bright pink.
Yep, it's called the Dragon Fruit drink from Starbucks. I'd say it's pretty good. Had to make myself feel fancy today, so.
Hey, look, it's a finals round day, so absolutely feel fancy.
Like, yes, I'm treating myself to a $5 drink. Like.
Sorry, folks, this is so strange. On my end, did you guys all hear it said like live streaming has begun? Yeah, and then right now it's showing stop live stream. So I'm curious as to why it's not following on YouTube.
Yeah, and do we have the link? For, like...
Okay, 1 second. I know what's going on now. Hold on.
And once the live stream is up, like, did I miss the link for it or something? Because
According to Business Insider India on September 21st, 2020, OnCall acts as a parent company, which hosts multiple gig job apps, such as a lawn mowing service called Lawn Fixer, a housekeeping service called Clean Quick, and now an eviction service called Civil. Essentially, it takes the variety of sites like Craigslist and marries it with the specificity of apps like Uber to create a hub where one can find multiple services in one spot. This is partially why Civil and OnCall are able to avoid the many legal and ethical questions that are probably going through your head right now. Because they're not technically evicting anyone, just connecting landlords with someone who is willing to evict someone, they are not legally responsible for evictions, which according to CNBC on March 23rd, 2021, are currently illegal due to the current nationwide moratorium on evictions. This is one of the first times that gig status has been used as a loophole to circumvent existing laws. This brings us to 2021, where Ice-T and Omarosa are doing cameos for an app that was created to fast-track evictions. So let's explore some defining features of the Civil app and how it defines the modern gig economy landscape. First, according to Inman on September 23rd, 2020, Civil offers services that a landlord might need, ranging from serving eviction notices to physically evicting a tenant. Landlords and gig workers alike must pay $35 a month to use the app and promise gig workers a lucrative $125 per hour. The Tampa Bay Times of October 30th, 2020 emphasized that while evictions are a complex legal process that must go through courts, Civil attempts to fast-track that process, connecting landlords with potential process servers, cleaning crews, and even eviction standby to ensure the move is done peacefully. What makes this app unique, though, is that in gig work, there are usually two consenting parties, the person requesting the service and the person delivering the service. But Civil involves an unconsenting third party, the individuals being evicted. Next, The timing of when the app was created is also not a coincidence. According to Motherboard, on September 21st, 2020, On Call began paying to advertise Civil nationwide after the pandemic hit, something it has never done with any of its other services. Now, many gig jobs use marketing strategies that specifically target the freedom desired by gig workers, and Civil is no different. According to their website, Civil is looking for self-motivated individuals with positive attitudes to be their own boss and work flexible hours. And despite using language normalized by nearly every gig app, the amount of press Civil received in the following months was staggering. However, according to Google AdSense data for Civil, any press was good press, with visits to Civil's site surging in the following months, many of them being me, researching this speech. Civil has received a ton of negative press since its release, which has led them to take down some of its ads. But as of today, the app is still up and running. So let's explore what the future of the gig economy holds by looking at both some positive and negative implications of the app. One positive implication of Civil is that it is an example of how labor in the United States is being revolutionized. In his book, Humans as a Service, Jeremiah Brazel emphasized that the gig economy is the fundamental reinvention of labor markets. And Civil is part of that reinvention, where legal processes, like evictions, have been made more convenient. However, as the gig economy continues to grow every year, protections for gig workers should evolve accordingly. But according to The Guardian, on October 5th, 2020, California's Proposition 22, which recently passed, currently exempts gig companies from extending employee protections to gig workers, a devastating blow to many who work in the industry. As more jobs become looped into the gig economy, it may put more pressure on companies to grow with it. Finally, we cannot talk about an app like Civil without discussing its negative implications. According to the aforementioned Vice article, Civil's creation suggests that there are some jobs that just shouldn't be gigified. Companies have now found the perfect solution to the jobs that they don't want to do. Outsource it to a freelancer. Jobs like tax auditing and bail collection could become the responsibility of gig workers as opposed to those responsible for perpetuating industries that thrive on taking advantage of low-income Americans. According to CNBC, on August 25th, 2020, approximately 40 million people are currently at risk of losing their homes. Someone who is handing out an eviction notice one week could be receiving one the next. By creating an app that is almost a parody of itself, we are forced to ask the question, is it the app that we're outraged at? Or the economic system that would allow an app like Civil to even exist? In 2021, almost any service imaginable is available through a couple of clicks. Today, we discuss the background of the gig economy that paved the way for Civil, the Civil app itself, and its implications. The gig economy isn't going anywhere, and apps like Civil are just the beginning of what our new economy can look like.
All right, Janelle, that was awesome. Thank you so much. That was great. Okay. Edith, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. Hola.
No worries.
Okay, thank you. Yes, let me.
All right.
Okay. Okay. Hold on, please. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Erica Gonzalez, a student at Los Angeles State Technical College, already had a lot on her plate before the coronavirus became a public health crisis. A first-generation college student, she juggles caring for her siblings, work, and classes. Moving classes online has only added to her more stress. It is terrifying for various reasons. I put so many years to transfer, and now I have to put life on pause. It is overwhelming because it is out of my hands. Erica is not alone. The 2020 study Stress in America report that 90% of college students are experiencing stress, and that stress is taking its toll on their mental health. Although I am studying mental health, social services, and addiction counseling, I find I am just like you. But I have found that by focusing on self-care strategies, I am able to navigate life. Today, I would like to explore self-care by discussing the impact that COVID-19 is having on us, then offer some self-care strategies and examine its implications on our mental health. As the country continues to battle coronavirus, a crisis among young adults struggling with mental health problems is growing. Students' mental well-being has been devastated by the pandemic, which has resulted in burnout, an increase in anxiety and depression, and lack of access to campus mental health services. Many colleges across the nation closed their campuses, forcing us to study from home. Suddenly, our home has become our school and even our workplace for those still working and are lucky to keep their job. We are spending many hours in front of a monitor that is affecting our physical and mental health and leading what now is called Zoom fatigue. It has been challenging to adapt to this new world in school from home schedule. Trying to balance some responsibilities, school and work, is overwhelming. Dr. Henry Rogland Miller, clinical psychologist at the University of Massachusetts, stated that this period of social distancing and abrupt transitions are intensifying a wide range of feelings that lead to anxiety and depression. A survey by the Students' Experience in the Research University report that 35% of college students have a major depressive disorder. Anxiety and depression rates are quite high among at-risk student populations, including low-income students, students of color like Erica Gonzalez, and LGBTQ students. COVID's impact on all aspects of life and the pressure to perform well academically is leading to a disturbing trend. The CDC report that 1 in 4 college students contemplate suicide on June 2020. The sudden closures of many college campuses separate us from not just our academic, but extracurricular activities and social support system. The director of the Depression Center at the Michigan University, Sagar Parikh, mentioned that college students have lost close connection with friends, and this deficit can lead to loneliness. What is more concerning is that as students are experiencing mental health challenges and even crises, counselors are worried about the lack of access to support them. The Healthy Mind Network report that 42% of college students admit to seeking mental health services, and 60% of them say the pandemic has made it harder to access to these services. Kelly Davis, director of Peer Advocacy for Mental Health America, is concerned that many counseling centers are simply unprepared for the increased need. For those who are finding access for mental health care lacking, learning some self-care strategies can offer some shelter from the storm. To help you navigate this period of uncertainty, stress, and anxiety, trying strategies of exercising and eating healthy, getting sleep, and mindfulness are powerful tools to take care of yourself. The Anxiety and Depression Association of America considers exercising vital to maintain mental fitness, and it can reduce stress. Studies show that it is very effective at reducing fatigue, improve alertness, and concentration. Dr. Michael Craig Miller, assistant professor of psychiatry at Harvard Medical School, explained that exercise produces endorphins, which are chemicals in the brain that act as natural painkiller and can relieve anxiety and depression. In addition, healthy eating habits can boost brain and physical health. Neuropsychologist Kevin Francis recommends simply cutting down processed food intake, increase fruit, vegetables, and fish will result in improvements in anxiety and depression symptoms. The Harvard Medical School website reports that 92% of serotonin is produced in the gastrointestinal tract, and it can help to regulate appetite and sleep, mediate mood, and inhibit pain. Sleep is another casualty of stress. The National Institute of Health website states that sleep deprivation can lead to chronic fatigue, anxiety, depression, and a lower quality of life. Dan Pazner, PhD, a professor at Stanford Medical School, described the current pandemic as a perfect storm of sleep problems. Getting enough sleep, which for college students is 9 hours, and maintaining a quality of sleep pattern can lead to an improved mood, better memory, and better grades. You may find that your mind has gone on overdrive. Unfortunately, telling our mind, stop it, just doesn't work. One successful skill is mindfulness, which is the practice of intentionality, bringing our minds to the present moment. Jan Kabat-Zinn, professor emeritus from the University of Massachusetts, stated that mindfulness can bring improvements in the overall well-being. Being mindful makes it easier to savor the pleasures in life, help you become fully engaged in activities, and create greater capacity to deal with adversity. By focusing on here and now, people who practice mindfulness find that they are less worried about the future. Mindfulness can help you to reduce stress, anxiety, and alleviate gastrointestinal difficulties. If there is a time when self-care strategies can come in handy, could be now. Let's explore the long-term implications of self-care. What is difficult about living during a global pandemic is not knowing when or how it will end, says Jackson Preston, a public health professor at California State University. As we all wait our turn to get vaccinated, a critical survival strategy is the practice of at-home self-care. If we don't know how to manage ourselves, how are we going through this? Because this is a marathon. This is not a sprint. Self-care means putting yourself first. It's not a selfish concept, but necessary one. Practicing self-care can alleviate the psychological distress and anxiety caused by the pandemic and prevent the adverse psychological outcomes. InfoCounseling.com states that self-care can help us and those around us. When we maintain our own health and sense of calm, we are more refreshed and energized, and we can provide a positive outlook for others. As our new normal evolves, keep a focus on mindfulness and the strategies that I have shared to reduce the stress levels and boost our spirit. We have examined how COVID has impacted our mental health. I have offered some self-care suggestions and analyzed the implications of self-care. This pandemic has dramatically reshaped our life, replacing routine with uncertainty. A key to maintain a state of equilibrium, says Jen Brand of the American Veterinary Medical Association, is focusing in the behaviors that are within our control and breaking those down into small and manageable units. Self-care is a behavior that is within our control, and we can put on practice day by day. So, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let it go. Repeat it and do it often. Remind ourselves that we will survive this pandemic. When we care for ourselves, we are stronger, more resilient, and able to care for others, which is exactly what we need right now. Thank you.
All right. Edith, that was great. Thank you so much. Okay. So I'm not sure about the other judges. I haven't judged in a while, but do we want to go to Tasha? She said in the chat she was here, or should we just keep going down the list and then go back up?
Discussion to chair.
Yeah, whichever feels better for you, Sydney.
All right. Tasha, you were in the chat. You seem ready to go. So let's go. Let's go, Tasha.
Awesome. Can you hear and see me okay?
Yep.
Awesome. Just let me know when you're ready.
Ready.
All right. Just last year, fellow Oregonian and retired Navy SEAL Chad Kuski underwent an alternative psychedelic drug treatment in hopes of finding relief from his PTSD. With almost 19 years of service to his country, Kusky's symptoms were debilitating and inescapable. Luckily, after connecting with an organization dedicated to helping veterans such as himself, Kusky began his journey to recovery using psilocybin therapy. After decades in counseling and unsuccessfully self-medicating with drugs and alcohol, Kusky reveals feeling rejuvenated after his new therapy sessions, feeling as if this massive weight has been lifted off of him. He now has the desire and willingness to make the changes necessary to start moving in the other direction. In 2019, the National Institute of Mental Health estimated that over 13 million people were diagnosed with a serious mental illness, and many of them are struggling to find relief with traditional treatment options. Could others find relief with psilocybin therapy? In this exploration of psilocybin therapy, we will delve into its history as a magic mushroom, its evolution into a medical alternative therapy, and the legal and economic implications as more research is developed. More than 200 species of fungus produce the psychedelic drug psilocybin. It's often called magic mushrooms and is capable of producing a series of effects on the brain. Indeed, magic mushrooms are having a therapeutic moment, but let's first explore its properties, second, how it was discovered for possible medical use, and then show how scientific studies are providing support for its promising results. Psilocybin, also known as magic mushrooms, is often associated with those living on the edge of society. However, according to the National Institute of Health, psilocybin mirrors the effects of a natural mood stabilizer called serotonin, and these effects are sought after by scientists to help combat the ever-growing mental health crisis in hopes of providing mental stability to those unable to find relief with modern prescriptions. According to the Psychedelic Science Review, in 1958, chemist Albert Hofmann isolated and identified psilocybin as the active ingredient found in psychoactive mushrooms. He then synthesized the compound, and it's been promoted as an alternative therapy in small circles ever since. And at Harvard in the 1960s, psychologist Timothy Leary and spiritual teacher Richard Alpert constructed the psilocybin project. And according to the Harvard University Psychology Department, their findings suggest that psilocybin could be just the thing to relieve various mental issues, like cluster headaches, mood disorders, and addiction. Unfortunately, though, the project was shut down in 1963 over ethical and substance abuse concerns, and by 1971, psychedelic drugs was banned completely by the federal government. These days, magic mushrooms are making a legitimate comeback, and the culture is becoming more accepting of the psychedelic fungi. Right now, the Food and Drug Administration has psilocybin listed as a Schedule I substance and classifies it to have no medicinal use. However, in 2018, the FDA granted Compass Pathways, a mental health care company, permission to study psilocybin in helping with treatment-resistant depression. And in 2019, Johns Hopkins revealed its Center for Psychedelic and Consciousness Research. As research studies continue to support the use of psilocybin as a breakthrough therapy to help with treatment-resistant depression, the question is, how is this therapy given? So let us take some time to explore the method of psilocybin therapy by first examining treatment protocols, second, the results of the treatment, and lastly, the long-term effects of the therapy. In the documented clinical trials, psilocybin is administered in pill form such as capsules. When one of the most recent of these trials was reported in the November 4th, 2020 AMA Journal of Psychology, a randomized clinical trial of 24 participants with major depressive disorder was conducted at the Johns Hopkins Research Facility in Maryland. Johns Hopkins states that the participants were under the supervision of a trained professional, and throughout their treatment, patients are periodically questioned about their experience, what feelings they're having, and what thoughts they are also having. The research is ongoing, but the current trials show the potential to break an individual's habitual patterns of thought, what some people are referring to as resetting the brain. This contrasts with current treatments for depression, such as the prescription of antidepressants, like selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, or SSRIs, which have been found to fail in achieving remission for many patients and leaving others with residual side effects. The long-term benefits for other individuals, along with the long-term effects of psilocybin on the brain, are still largely unknown. However, the promise psilocybin shows in treating treatment-resistant depression, as well as drug dependencies, offers a promising future for those in need. Chad Kusky is a believer. Psilocybin therapy helped him stop his habitual use of alcohol and narcotics, as well as put his PTSD in remission. Like Kusky, many patients are reporting immediate relief from similar disorders. Treatment-resistant depression is one of the fastest growing health problems we face today, affecting 100 million people around the world who do not respond to existing treatments. It's also the leading cause of ill health and disability worldwide. There are many implications to psilocybin. There are legal obstacles, and of course the same ethical and abuse concerns of the past still exist. But as research continues, safe and practical protocols are addressing those concerns. On November 4th, 2020, Nicole Richard, writer and advocate for the Way of Leaf blog, pointed out that psilocybin is legal in a variety of countries, like Mexico, the Czech Republic, and Brazil. However, the use and possession of psilocybin is illegal in the United States. And these days, there's a growing movement towards its decriminalization. The city of Denver, Colorado became the first US city to decriminalize it in May 2019. And in June 2019, the San Francisco Chronicle reported that the cities of Oakland and Santa Cruz, California, quickly followed. And last year, Oregon became the first state in the country to legalize psilocybin with the passage of Measure 109. And according to the November 4th, 2020 Oregonian, this measure not only drastically reduces penalties for using or possessing psilocybin, but it also creates a 2-year implementation period, which started in January of this year. This establishes safety practices and training standards before granting licenses to psilocybin service centers, facilitators, and therapists, as well as manufacturers and testing labs. This regulated program would maximize patient safety and create a responsible, equitable, and affordable treatment option. Creating a framework that supports all ethical and addiction concerns is just as important as psilocybin therapy. And with more research and collaboration, all states could one day offer the same. So where do we go from here? While there was not much resistance to Oregon's ballot measure, some anticipate backlash now that it's passed. On November 4th, 2020, Sherry Eckert, co-founder of the Oregon Psilocybin Society and co-sponsor of Measure 109, stated to Wired magazine, "We suspect that Big Pharma is not going to like this idea. If you can treat an individual and it actually heals them, and they no longer need to be daily dosing psych meds, well, that definitely impacts their budget." She and others note that psilocybin could be just the thing to help ease the enormous financial cost of mental health disorders. The market for depression medicine alone is expected to be worth $16.8 billion worldwide next year. Legalizing this breakthrough therapy across our nation, the way Oregon has just done, will offer hope for those just like Chad Kusky and millions of others currently suffering. More research is needed before we can make any definitive claims about the power of psilocybin therapy, but current research is given promising results. You have to wonder, if not for the war on drugs, would our understanding of psilocybin and psychedelics be far more advanced? The floodgates have been reopened, and Oregonians are now on board. Today we have explored the history of the magic mushroom and the study of its healing properties, explained how psilocybin is utilized as a treatment, and the long road to decriminalization and legalization in the United States. There have been few, if any, real breakthroughs in the last quarter century in the development of psychiatric medicines. Psilocybin promises to be a monumentous change. This is good news for folks like Chad Kusky, who now enjoys his life without needing an immediate fix every time he is confronted by life's problems. Unlike the pharmaceutical medications he was taking every day with no positive effect, Kusky now has a therapy session once every 4 months to maintain progress. As international, federal, and state governments and more people open their mind to psilocybin and psychedelics in general, we may soon usher in a revolution in mental health and well-being. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. That was all. D'Angelo.
Hi, mic check?
Yep, we can hear you.
Oh, excuse me. I checked in a couple speeches ago and I'm still double entered. I put it in the chat. I'm so sorry.
Oh, okay. So do you need to go now and then go to your other round?
Yeah, I still need to go to the other round.
D'Angelo, is it okay if Richard goes first?
Yeah, 100%. Go for it.
Okay. All right, Richard, we're ready for you.
Okay, can I do a quick camera check before we start?
Sure. Yeah.
Awesome. And does this look okay?
Yes, we can see you and hear you.
Cool. And just a quick content warning for everyone. This speech is going to involve discussions of mass shootings. So if anyone needs to take a second to just step out, please feel free to. Dr. Arthur Stout's pamphlet tells a timely story. States was inundated with disease, and he had an answer. Quarantine was necessary, and in his words, the degenerative Genghis Khans are overrunning California with disease. That rhetoric might sound like a white supremacist responding to 2020, but Stout's pamphlet wasn't published in 2020. Try 1862. In her 2009 book, Legacies of Plague, rhetoric historian Jennifer Cook defines disease rhetoric as the apportionment of blame for disease onto marginalized communities, typically people of color. And The Hill of March 31st, 2020, specifically explicates this to Asian American disease rhetoric: smallpox, syphilis, trachoma, the bubonic plague, and much more, for over 250 years with zero historical truths to claim. And for our newest pandemic, nonprofit organization Stop Asian American Hate of March 15th, 2021 details a 150% increase in hate-related attacks, totaling nearly 4,000 since the start of the pandemic, with 100 hate-related attacks daily. And if documented examples of disease-associated language with correlations to hate crime seem impossible to be neutrally informed about, well, the FBI agrees with you. That's the official reason for why they don't even have an anti-Asian American hate crime tracker. So for those of us who disagree with the FBI, we need to understand the history of disease rhetoric against Asian Americans to memorialize those it's claimed and why it's breaking out today. It's not one-off rhetoric, but an entire historical timeline. So let's examine 3 key moments on that timeline, with implications for 2021 following each. Because the aforementioned Hill calls COVID-19 the pathologizing of the Asian American identity. But they're wrong. We've always been called pathogen. Early American documents argue that bubonic plagues only affected Asians, not clean white people. The Black Plague must have been a fluke. Those associations permeate the origins of Asian American history. So let's understand how they arrived and implicatively how they've come back. First, while Ellis Island migration was encouraged, Asian migrants went through Angel Island and faced filthy conditions, abuse, and white lawmakers who believed they were taking American jobs. So to restrict immigration, white lawmakers found an excuse: blame syphilis. The Page Act of 1875 banned Asian women from entering the country, writing that they were disproportionately prostitutes who carried potent syphilis that would threaten first California and then the world. So the Angel Island Foundation chronicles: Asian women were deported, which then led to family deportation, isolation, interrogation, and forced naked examinations. Even before the Chinese Exclusion Act, the Page Act first taught America: to remove a people, remove a disease. Implicitly, we still pathologize Asian women today. 1875 did so by linking Asian women to sexual disease. March 21, though, by linking Asian women to a disease of sex: addiction. NPR of March 19th, 2021 clarifies: the Atlanta shooter's legal defense and arresting officers claim that he killed Asian women sex workers because they were temptations for him to eliminate. And those same officers told Soon Chung Park's husband that she hadn't been shot, but that she had made an accident. The same Orientalism that fetishized, exotified, and ultimately rejected Asian women hasn't changed since the 1875 Page Act. Asian women are still the symptoms, not people. Fast forward to 1960 civil rights movements, and disease rhetoric less overt, more microaggressive, and more insidious. Chinese restaurant syndrome was that covert evolution. So let's examine what it is and its COVID evidence today. First, as Duke researcher Michelle Lane documents, in 1968, Dr. Ho Man Kwok wrote the New England Journal of Medicine, citing chest pain from Chinese food with MSG, known then as the mysterious white powder of the Orient, because the mysterious white powder of the West was cocaine. But here's the problem. Dr. Ho Man Kwok never existed. A groundbreaking 2019 Colgate University report provided his deathbed confession. Hung over after Chinese food, Dr. Howard Steele bet friends $10 that he could use a fake ethnic pseudonym and made up claims to prank journals. Soon after, Chinese restaurant syndrome was medically coined to describe MSG's supposed effects, like tremors, nausea, and even brain lesions. Even though those claims have been medically debunked. The CDC's health warnings at the time left health-conscious white consumers to reject Asian businesses, harass staff, and historically boycott us. Stern's bet won him $10 and lost small Asian businesses everything. Implicatively, whiteness today still utilizes disease rhetoric to literally starve out our livelihoods. Officials like California's Governor Gavin Newsom replaced Chinese restaurant syndrome with claims that his California strain of COVID originated from a Vietnamese nail salon, exemplifying a trend. Blame Asian businesses for American COVID. The same rhetorical associations, the same victims, fueling, as the Business Insider of May 5th, 2020 quantifies, 90% less business, while America's white billionaires get richer. Disease rhetoric isn't about medical fact. It's about consuming a population's economic livelihood by proclaiming them disease. And unlike MSG, these side effects are real. Asian Americans spent the 80s and 90s labeled model minority. But the next millennium not only challenged that notion, but provided the closest COVID analog our nation has ever seen. So let's examine the 2002 SARS outbreak and its implications for COVID now. First, the CDC's official SARS timeline locates SARS origins in 2002 Guangdong, China, and on American shores, headlines on the Asian disease quickly became rhetorical epicenters. As the American Journal of Criminal Justice explains in March 2020, 10% of all CDC hotline calls were to report feeling unsafe near Asian co-workers and healthcare workers, and not just at Chinese persons, as Carrie-Ann Leong writes for the Center of Public Integrity in April 2020. The nursing industry employed a disproportionate density of Filipino Americans who were isolated, forced to work overtime when colleagues wouldn't, and white America even avoided hospitals with Filipino staff. So it's no surprise that the only nursing SARS deaths were Chinese and Latino. White America couldn't tell the difference. Implicatively, SARS proves how COVID discrimination has and will further mutate to homogenize all Asians, who, according to Breitbart, Fox News, and even the Washington Post, could be intentional spreaders for disease. So Filipino Americans face deja vu. As the Business Insider of May 5th, 2020 clarifies, despite comprising only 4% of US nurses, 32% of US nursing COVID deaths are Filipino. And this infection is spreading across ethnicities. Insider LA of April 21st, 2021 clarifies, a 70-year-old Los Angeles Mexican-American woman was nearly killed for appearing Chinese. And so in 2021, it's not that some Asians carry disease. It's that all of us have a diseased culture. 1 month ago, while everybody was preparing for nationals, another mass shooting occurred in the US's third largest Asian population, Orange County, California. And having examined the implications of the history of Asian American disease rhetoric, we need to continue educating ourselves. So I've attached a link in the chat to a pamphlet of historical Asian American documents and research, because this is my answer. We're not the contagion. Whiteness is.
All right, Richard, thank you so much. Good luck in your next round.
Thank you very much.
All right. D'Angelo, are you ready?
Yes.
All right.
Awesome. Let me move again. Focused. During World War II in the 1940s, a progressive idea made its way through Congress. Those who served during the war would be entitled to what Congress had named the GI Bill. The bill would have great benefits for healthcare, education, and even a guaranteed home loan for returning veterans. And its language was inclusive for all of those who served. But the reality of what happened was different for white veterans and black veterans due to segregation. States fought for control of the services to ensure that they could decline black veterans from getting their benefits, especially homes. White covenants, they popped up in the suburbs that disallowed blacks from living in them. A person and has served and had white skin could purchase a property in one of these covenants, no problem. But a black veteran with his black skin could not. Not only did this abuse of power generate a large income gap between blacks and whites in America, it built a foundation for redlining. And to this day, it's hard to quantify the damage to many black communities by blocking black veterans from receiving the benefits of this highly progressive bill. Today, we'll look at the past, the present, and the future implications of the denial of the GI Bill for black veterans in order to uncover just how severe the consequences of these actions were. Let's start by looking at the past in two parts: what the GI Bill was, and then how it went wrong. First, what it was. The GI Bill was enacted in 1944 with the intent of helping World War II veterans returning from the war. According to History.com on June 7, 2019, for the 50 million troops returning from the war, the bill promised a guarantee-backed home loan. Veterans could return home knowing they could buy a home backed by the federal government. And this boomed much of the current suburban neighborhoods that we see today. Veterans would also receive up to a year of unemployment benefits, which helped them transition from being soldiers to civilians by being able to acquire jobs or skills in that time. Most importantly, according to the Military Times on November 9, 2019, the GI Bill provided a free education for troops in a time where higher learning was more for those with great wealth or status. According to the Veterans Affairs website on November 4, 2013, it is said that the GI Bill is responsible for shaping the middle class in America post-World War II. And for every $1 Uncle Sam invested in the GI Bill, we had 7 go back into the American economy. The number of Americans who earned college degrees more than doubled before and after the war. And this increase in student numbers called for an expansion of different types of majors being offered, like science, business, and engineering, all in a nation where college instruction was focused primarily on the liberal arts. Second, how it went wrong. Since segregation was still in effect, many segregationists feared that Black veterans would use public sympathy to advocate against Jim Crow laws. According to History.com on September 30th, 2019, in order to block Black veterans from receiving their GI benefits, the chair of the House Veterans Committee, Mississippi Congressman John Rankin, fought the bill and he won. He was able to allow the states to allow the GI programs to be divvied out rather than the federal government. This ensured that segregationist ideals of the time, especially from the South, would still be able to be enforced and disallow Blacks from gaining social or economic status, utilizing this bill the same way white Americans were. Citing from the Military Times article in 2019, when voting on unemployment benefits included in the GI Bill, Rankin, he refused to cast a vote, thereby denying the bill's passing at all. He would rather nobody receive this benefit if it meant Black Southerners getting it. Next, let's talk about how this impacted today's society in two ways, financially and educationally. What Rankin was able to accomplish enabled white-owned banks to be able to decline Blacks from their guaranteed loan. This expanded and boomed the practice of redlining. According to NPR.org on May 3rd, 2017, redlining can simply be defined as disallowing Blacks from owning homes in or near their own neighborhoods by denying their loans. This forced Black Americans into housing projects while also being disallowed from living in white neighborhoods due to segregation. The Federal Housing Association actually gave subsidies to land developers building suburban homes only and only if they disallowed Black people from living there. According to progressive.org on November 20th, 2017, in 1947, 3,200 VA loans were used in the Mississippi area to buy homes, John Rankin's home state, and just 2 of those went to Black veterans. In that same year, in the New York and the New Jersey suburbs, 67,000 loans were used. Fewer than 100 of those went to non-whites. Blacks were denied the greatest way to gain wealth through the 20th century, and these practices went on well after segregation, and the effects can still be traced in neighborhood demographics today. Second, educationally. The benefits could be used by Black veterans. However, according to history.com on September 19, 2019, 95% of them had to go to a Blacks-only college, and these colleges became overpopulated. They were underfunded, and some lost their accreditation due to those issues. From the Military Times in 2009, there were instances where Black veterans would be accepted into other colleges only to be turned away at the door when the color of their skin was found out. When the GI Bill ended its original iteration in 1958, it now represented a full manifestation of a racial wealth gap in effect. And in one way, income levels of today are represented by denying Black veterans these benefits. The median income for white households in 2017 was around $68,000. And according to the US Census, for Black households, $40,000. Finally, let's take a look at some of the implications of this historic racism and injustice. First, utilizing this information, it's important to adjust attitudes towards the struggles of Black Americans today. America has been the land of opportunity for many people over many generations, and those who committed themselves to serve our country should have at least been commended, but they weren't. They were deceived for their free labor and weren't left to work on their own. They were fought along the way while also being a part of the system fighting them. When Black veterans were trying to gain leverage in society, there were people preemptively striking them to prevent their segregationist principles from being impacted, disallowing Blacks advancement through the same system that had promised it to everyone. Second, a lack of education regarding this piece of history could result in it happening again in some fashion. If you choose not to acknowledge what actually happened in this country during the 1940s or throughout segregation, we are all disregarding a shameful past that has had a lasting impact on what we associate with each other underneath one flag as fellow Americans. Millions of Black veterans served our country and were denied a revolutionary benefit that shaped the middle class, only widening a huge equality gap that already existed. Discussions about this issue bring to light the question of reparations for their descendants, reparations for slaves, and enlightenment to understanding that the system has never been fair for everyone. Today, we look at the past, the present, and the future implications of the denial of the GI Bill towards Black veterans. We need to do better for our fellow Americans and make amends for those who have been affected by the unjust actions of what used to just be common practice in our great country. And as a Black veteran in college today who benefits from the forever GI Bill, I am in the first generation of my family to go to college. And I am living the life that these Black veterans fought for in World War II almost 80 years later. I am proud of my service, but I empathize with the ones that also serve and were never honored in the way that I am.
All right. Great job, D'Angelo. Thank you. And our last person, Caroline. Caroline, are you ready?
Yes. My camera. Can I have 1 second? Cause I don't think my camera is working.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it works now. Can you all see me and hear me okay?
Yes.
In 1978, Kim Lu, a child immigrant from Vietnam, together with her family, left the land of her birth to escape from poverty and persecution. According to the Saturday Evening Post, they were floating aimlessly for 10 months on a ship with 2,300 other refugees in a very poor condition, full of festering bags of flour and one functioning restroom. Lu's family sold everything that they had and put together their entire family savings for around $135,000 in today's dollar to get on that ship, even though there were no guarantee that this would work. And if they got caught, they would be jailed and tortured. These people all risked their life for the same reason, to escape from oppressive regime and flee to the United States for freedom. According to the United States Census in 2020, there are 1.7 million Vietnamese Americans currently residing in the U.S., with California alone housing 1.3 million. And according to NBC News October 7, 2020, the experiences of the Vietnamese American become lumped together with the Asian American experience overall. And the Vietnamese people are rarely willing to share these stories with the next generation because the culture focuses on staying quiet and moving forward. However, this year, we heard a lot more from the Vietnamese community. In the last election, 90% of the Vietnamese immigrants voting for Trump. And while this might seem surprising to those in the Vietnamese community who understand the country's history, this was not a shock. It is important to learn about the Vietnamese diaspora because we are an often overlooked group that has a surprisingly powerful impact on American national politics. So today, we will go over the story of Vietnamese American, the significance of this group, and some implications of learning about these stories. Because as Jang Pham Nguyen, a contributor of Epicure and Culture newspaper said, this is one of millions of refugee stories, which I'm a product of. Growing up, I never knew much about my parents' background. I never knew much about their journey until I found it myself. After months of traveling, Kim's family was denied entry at the ports of Hong Kong, Indonesia, and Brunei. They were finally got accepted to a refugee camp in the Philippines and got sponsored by a church group in Minnesota. Kim's story will lead us to exploring the background by first discussing the Vietnam War and the effects on the Vietnamese refugees. According to JSTOR Daily on June 22, 2020, after failing to unify Vietnam through the means of election, the North Vietnam decided that the country was going to be unified by force, sparking the beginning of the Vietnam War. Vietnamese refugees began to flee the country on boats, and their amount were so vast that many fell off the boat and died. Kim Lu stated in her personal essay on the Saturday Evening Post, describing the boat as a floating petri dish of equal parts vomit, diarrhea, desperation, and hope. Jane Pham Nguyen depicts on her biography on her site in 2018. While out at sea, a big fishing boat approached them. Thai pirates. They attacked the refugee boat, raping and killing women, tossing their bodies, and then murdered children after the sea. Any men who tried to fight back were killed and thrown overboard. Out of 120 people, only 15 men survived, and many others were stranded at the sea with nowhere to go. They faced starvation, malnutrition, and dehydration, oftentimes relying on drinking their own urine to survive. This kind of journey was so common for Vietnamese people coming to the United States that currently, if you know a Vietnamese person, it is likely that either their generation or one generation before them went through these horrific experiences. In April of 1975, the North Vietnam communists stripped families of their livelihoods, destroying their businesses and much of their savings. Unless they worked for the communist government, they were guaranteed to live in poverty. This leads us to our second point, how Vietnamese Americans contributed and assimilated once coming to America. Because we were one of the last Asian minorities to arrive in the US, we didn't suffer much discrimination, which allowed us more opportunities to create culture hubs and small businesses. Today, San Jose and Little Saigon are homes of thriving Vietnamese community that continue to sustain the Vietnamese wealth and culture. And like most Asian Americans, the Vietnamese community raised a highly educated second generation and sticking to their own community. According to Seattle Times, October 19, 2020, this often meant that Vietnamese people would stay out of American politics, with historically very low voter turnout. Vietnamese people would keep up a political issue in the home country, mainly China territory encroachment on Vietnam. With the historical drama and the continuous conflict between the Communist China, according to BBC News, October 28, 2018, state that Vietnamese refugees who settled in the US after fleeing from a communist-led country relate to the Republican Party that has stood for anti-communism and freedom. And while the process of learning about first-generation Vietnamese has been difficult, journalist Harry Nguyen on August 30, 2020 recounts, I have always known that my parents were conservatives who appeared publicly apolitical to avoid conflicts. Many children, though, are now actively fighting with their own parent over a 2020 election. Millions of Americans watched as the riots took place in the nation's capital. Amongst the American flags, Trump flags, Confederate flags was a bright yellow flag with 3 red stripes, the flag of the Republic of Vietnam. According to Washington Post on January 21st, 2021, not only do Vietnamese people side with the Republican, they also relate to Southern Trump supporters who both feel like their country was taken after they were defeated in the Civil War. This leads us to our implications. First, this election cycle was the very first time Vietnamese people felt included in politics because Trump was the very first president that they understood. And he is the only president that they believe to properly stand up to China. According to the Asian American survey conducted this summer, Vietnamese were the only Asian group that expressed more support for Trump than Biden, with the majority of Vietnamese people voting for Trump. This demographic was widely ignored because the US has a tendency of lumping minorities together as a huge monolith. Similarly, this year, Cuban Americans had a very high voter turnout for Trump, and because of Castro, they also associate Democrats with communism. And like Vietnamese voter, they will lump in with Latinx voter with very little campaigning that was tailored to this group, historical and political background. The goal of this speech was to highlight why it is important to learn about specific group histories in order to campaign to them properly. Because when we do, we're able to learn the nuances that form the politics of our smallest but the most significant communities. It has taken Vietnamese people a very long time to tell these dramatic stories, not even with their own children. Today, we discuss the Vietnamese American by going over our migration story, assimilation, and implications. We tend to believe that people who migrate all come for the same reason. It was not just seeking for general advancement or better opportunities. For Vietnamese people, it was a life or death situation. They risked their life for this opportunity, and many people died trying. It is important to learn about the history of our ancestors, and sometimes we have to be the ones to learn the histories ourselves.
All right. Thank you, Caroline. That was awesome. Good job to everybody. All right. Congratulations making it to this round, and have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Judge. Have a nice day.
Yes, thank you. Have a good one.